people say to me, would you like to be playing today and making all the money they're making and this and that? I said, I wouldn't trade those years in Brooklyn for all the money you could give me.
I loved every minute of it. I had some bad days. I think I even loved those.
I felt at home playing with the Dodgers as I did any other team, because I didn't feel out of place because I was a black man.
From the 40s to the 60s, most black people were for the Dodgers. I'm recognized because I used to pitch for the Dodgers.
Hell, the uniform looked great. Everything looked great about it. It just was appealing to me. The Dodgers were appealing.
We didn't look at ourselves as being touching anybody's lives or anything. We were just at work doing our job, you know.
Even the fans in Brooklyn, you loved them. The people used to say, please call Win tomorrow. My husband gets mad. He won't eat. He won't do this.
I don't know what made it so different from being with any other ball club, to tell you the truth. But it was.
They were young men who had grown up during the Depression in cities all across America. When they came together in Brooklyn, they were forced to grow up in a hurry, for they were all part of the Jackie Robinson Brooklyn Dodgers, the first and most thoroughly integrated team in Major League Baseball. Hate was a persistent threat, but they banded together and won pennants and World Series and most of all, hearts. They were a neighborhood team that became a national issue, and their spirit leaped from the field into the grandstand and affected us all. Excuse me. You mind? Thank you very much. This is Brooklyn. And there used to be a hell of a baseball team here. In 1947, I was a young comedian working my first Broadway show, Make My Manhattan. And on summer afternoons, I would go up to the tar roof of my building with my portable radio, which was as big as a refrigerator, and listen to Red Barber describe the games at Ebbets Field. Oh, there were great teams in New York at that time. The Yankees, the Giants, then there were the Dodgers. And the Dodgers, they were something special. Brooklyn was a middle-class community between the wars, with good schools and extensive cultural events. In an area so flat and populous, the most efficient means of transportation was the trolley car. To survive in Brooklyn, one had to be a dodger of trolley cars. And this absurdity gave the borough's baseball team its nickname. The Brooklyn Dodgers were an awful team in the 30s. So awful that fans began referring to them as them bums. When the team improved, the label stuck as an affectionate irony. The Dodgers won a pennant in 1941, but selective service hit them hard. While most of the baseball players were overseas serving their country, a man with a vision that would change all their lives came to Brooklyn. His name, Branch Rickey. He had been a poor catcher for the St. Louis Cardinals and a mediocre manager. When he moved into the team's front office, he proved to be an administrative genius, and his Cardinals dominated the National League. Now he was determined to make the Dodgers perennial champions, whatever that required. Brooklyn began to change after the war. The trolley was superseded by the automobile, and all highways led away from Brooklyn. Families left their blocks for split-level homes on Long Island potato farms. As the old dwellers, mostly white, moved out, new dwellers, many black and Puerto Ricans, moved in. Could the middle class survive here? Could the poor begin to thrive here? Could people with visible differences live side by side as neighbors? The pattern was the same in all American cities. But the Dodgers provided Brooklyn with a peculiar inspiration. For there in the little ballpark on Bedford Avenue, something was stirring. Something quite remarkable was happening. Until 1947, all baseball heroes had been white. The grass was green, the dirt was brown, and the players were white. And then in 1947, this man appeared on the field in Brooklyn. His name, Jackie Robinson. He could hit, bunt, run, steal. He burned with a dark fire and charged at ball games. But skills alone did not make Jackie Robinson the first black in the major leagues. Branch Rickey saw something extraordinary in this man's soul. Robinson bore the burden of a pioneer. He was hit by pitches, spiked, cursed at, banned from hotels. But he refused to be defeated by these obstacles. If anything, they made him stronger. The dominant truth of the Jackie Robinson Dodgers was integration. The struggle may seem modest now, but let me tell you, it wasn't modest then. It was monumental.
Coming up through the South with Jack in those early years, picketing at the ballpark, the Klan picketed us in Atlanta, around a hotel, threatening letters, a lot of them. Take the field, you'd be shot.
We would be coming north at the time, and people would holler anything at the guy.
Some of those guys were too bad. We had guys that even took a slice out of him with a spike, running to first base and spiked him. And
Tried to get his Achilles tendon and tried to sever that. That's how deep this was when he first started.
Some of the pitchers I've heard around the league say we ought to form a place that everybody hit him at least once a game or something like that, you know. And if you remember the first 2 or 3 years, he broke a record for getting hit by pitches.
The game was over. Then Jackie would go to some private home to stay and not go to the fine hotel, a major league hotel.
We went to the finest restaurant that was in Alabama. And Jackie, Roy Campanella, had to have, and Don Newcomb, Don was there at that time, had to have a box lunch on the bus.
Why didn't some of the white guys do something about this situation? Was a thing. What could they do? We had no influence on anything except their team and on the field. And we did do something. The players did do something about it. We accepted. We played with them.
A foul ball went up over the dugout in Wrigley Field. In the old days, it was just an open dugout, and Jackie was the first baseman. And he went over and he leaned over and he started falling in the dugout, and he felt 2 hands holding him up, and he looked down, and it was Branca's face, and Jackie said, Branca said, nice try. And Jackie said when he trotted back to first base, he felt, hey, maybe these guys do want me.
I just thank God that we were successful, because I look at it today and say, supposing we were not successful, would it happen today that black players is on every team in the National League and American League?
But one didn't go to Ebbets Field for sociology. Exciting baseball was the attraction. From the moment Robinson joined them, the Dodgers became the team to beat in the National League. And yet, as much as they did win, they couldn't win at all. And then, in 1955, the years of frustration finally ended. It was a glorious moment for the Dodgers and for all of Brooklyn. Good guys had finally won one. The bums were champions. We were all champions. The moment of glory was soon followed by heartbreak. All baseball teams undergo some change, but this Dodger team seemed to disappear. Jackie Robinson retired rather than go to the hated Giants. Roy Campanella was robbed of his awesome skills. Other players were traded or retired. And then the final blow. Walter O'Malley, who had taken full control of the team from his partner Branch Rickey, deserted Ebbets Field, Brooklyn, and the devoted fans. With the blink of an eye, the era was over. Jackie Robinson Brooklyn Dodgers were just a legend. It's been 25 years now since the Dodgers left this site, and it's still hard to believe they're gone. Those Brooklyn Dodgers, they'll always remind me of a happy time in my own life and an important time in our nation's history. But what did the Dodgers mean to the men who were part of that team? How has life been for them? And what are they like today? As husbands, as fathers, and as men. The captain and elder statesman of the post-war Dodgers was Harold Pee Wee Reese from Louisville, Kentucky. Pee Wee was a graceful shortstop, brilliant base runner, and an inspiration to his teammates, on the field and off the field.
I've been a lot of places and all over the States, and I end up back here all the time. Most of my old friends and right here in Louisville. Lived in Brooklyn for 18 years, and they tried to get me to stay in New York, but I always came back here. Look out, trees. Most of the players that are still alive to this day still call me captain. I think Mr. Rickey really made me captain. I guess maybe because I was the only one on the ball club that was there before the war.
Pee Wee Reese was a senior. The rest of us were freshmen.
Maybe the name of the better name for me would have been to call me the big brother in place of captain of the ball club.
The management had very few disciplinary problems because Pee Wee would usually take care of it.
Psychologist, maybe he is, I don't know, but he could analyze me and read me perfectly.
But he used to call me, hey, Dago. And I used to just laugh it off because I liked Pee Wee, you know? Now, if I didn't like him, it'd be a different story.
Yeah, let's see. When did I first hear about Jackie Robinson? I guess it was when I was coming back from overseas. It was 1945. I was aboard ship and coming back from Guam. I'd spent about 19 or 20 months overseas, and someone on the ship knew who I was, or I was stationed with him. He came back and told me, he said that Pee Wee, I guess something to tell you, said the Dodgers signed a black or nigger, whatever he said at the time, I don't remember, but and I kind of laughed about it. I said, you got to be kidding. They wouldn't sign a black, because we always thought that they always said that the blacks couldn't play under pressure, and if things got hot, they would fold up and all this stuff. So later, a little bit later on, maybe an hour or two later, he came back and told me the same kid said he was not only a black, but he's a shortstop. Now then, he caught my attention, really, when he said he was a shortstop.
Pee Wee, I think, truly coming from more in the South, more where there was some racial prejudice, Pee Wee did a beautiful thing with Jackie.
It was strange seeing this black man in the clubhouse when all of us, rest of us, were so white, I guess. But sitting down playing cards with him the first time, and when I did, he loved to play cards and was a good card player. I can remember some of the players saying to me, how can you sit down and play with this guy? I said, it didn't seem too bad to me. It didn't seem too strange. And, bicker back and forth about it and say a few words. But then after a while, really, I thought nothing in the world about it.
He said, Pee Wee says, well, fellas, we've got to make a decision. He says, now, the man leading this team and batting is not in the room. He says, now, we either want to win a pennant or we don't. He said, now, you see the way the other teams are. They're trying to spike them when they run across first base. They're knocking them down unnecessarily. He said, they're calling the names. He says, we don't know when he'll explode. So the first guy, if it looks like he's ever going to fight or a fight's going to start, the first guy closest to Jackie, knock him down and sit on him. So if any pictures come out of anything, nobody can point and say, see, we told you, those guys are just troublemakers.
We had quite a few laughs about it because he used to get mail where he'd show me where if you play today in Montgomery, you will be killed or something like that. And we would laugh about it and say, hey, Jackie, don't get too close to me. The guy may not be a good shot or something like that. But he was always played rather loose. Jackie and I became friends. We played golf together, played tennis together. I never roomed with Jackie, and I got that a lot of times when I came home. You and Jackie roomed together? And I would say something, maybe yes, or something like that. After I got out of baseball, I went into television, and I worked in there for about 13 years, which I enjoyed doing quite a bit. Mr. Hillary came to me and asked me if I'd like to work for Hillary and Bradsby. And I said, well, why not? Because I'll still be around baseball. I think if I had not stayed around baseball after being in professional baseball for 22 years, I think I would have been a very unhappy person. But I have been very fortunate, I will admit that. But not because of my brains up here, because I've had some very good friends that kind of watched over me. I don't think they'll have to hold any charity game for me, but if my wife just keeps my book straight, I'll be all right.
Flanking Reese at the corners of the seamless Dodger infield were Billy Cox, a private man from Newport, Pennsylvania, who guarded third base like he was protecting his family, and Gil Hodges from Indiana, who guarded his emotions but not his strength and dignity.
The Dodgers were always looking for another third baseman, and Billy Cox would wind up every year playing third, and he turned out to be one of the greatest third basemen in the game, especially with his hands. Billy had those quick hands. And incidentally, he was my roommate for 7 years, and I knew Bill real well. And he had those quick hands, and he'd come into the mound and he'd say, just let him hit it this way, Preach, the old horse will snip him. He called it snipping him. His hand was so quick, he just snipped the ball. He didn't hold his glove down the field.
Gil Hodges represented a pillar of strength. I mean, you looked at Moon and you thought, power.
He was a man of few words. Because if you look at the record back, he'd never complained to the umpire. He never complained on any calls, decisions, or whatnot. But he just let his bat and his glove speak for him.
I can remember Charlie Dresden saying something about, Gil, if you will just argue enough to get thrown out of a ball game, I'll give you $100. Well, Gil would never do it.
You know, a phenomenon that's still unexplainable is they never booed Hodges in Brooklyn. And he had some bad slumps. But somehow the fans in Brooklyn caught that personality of Hodges. He was so genuine and true blue that you couldn't boo Hodges.
Carl Erskine from Anderson, Indiana, was admired by his teammates and adored by the fans. Erskine pitched 2 no-hitters, won 20 games in 1953, and set a record by striking out 14 Yankees in 1 game of the 1953 World Series. And he was blessed with the name that best suited the unique Brooklynese tongue, Erskine. Hey, Erskine, we're with you, Erskine.
Okay, there you go. I have always had a sense of feeling about having a hometown. I'm born and raised in Anderson, Indiana. I've always been proud of that. In fact, around the National League, guys would often say, "Hi, Anderson." As I've been more active in the bank, then I've become more active in board relationships with St. John's Medical Center, Anderson College, YMCA, and those things. I don't exactly feel that I owe somebody something, and yet there's a debt of gratitude in there someplace that comes back to me because this town's been very supportive of me. My dad get home from work at 3:30, 4 o'clock. He'd walk home from the plant, get out the ball gloves, and I can recall one particular instance where Dad found a book on pitching. So he's going to teach me some techniques out of pitching. We're in the living room of our house, and my dad has the book in this hand and the ball in this hand. He's talking to me about pitching. And he says, now here's the way you throw a curveball. And you hold it thus, and you reach back thus, and you cock the wrist thus, and he's very into what he's doing, and he says, and you rotate it out and over your hand this way, and when he made that motion, he actually released the ball, which bounced through a doorway into the dining room, into a china cupboard, broke the china cupboard door, the glass, dishes, gee. But my dad very calmly said, gee, that one of the best breaks I ever got on a ball. That's how I learned to throw my overhand curveball. It was my second year in pro baseball, and I was a candidate for making the Fort Worth Cats baseball team. The big club was coming through in the spring to play an exhibition game in Fort Worth. And I pitched that afternoon, and as I recall, I pitched 3 innings, and must have pitched fairly well. I think I struck out a couple people, and but after the game, of all people, Jackie Robinson looked me up after the game. He came across the field, and he said, hey, young man, I almost want to tell you something. You won't be long for this league. You're going to be with us very soon. You just count on it. Boy, what a boost that was for me. I'm barely 19. Well, I guess I'm 20 by this time. And to have somebody off the big club, but here Jackie Robinson came across to say this to me. Later that summer, I won 15 by mid-July in Fort Worth. And I joined a team in Pittsburgh. Walked into Shinley, from the Shinley Hotel, walked over to the ballpark at Old Forbes Field. Didn't know anybody, had my little duffel bag, went in, looked for a locker, scared to death. The first guy over to my locker was Jackie Robinson. He smiled at me, he put out his hand, and he said, what did I tell you? You couldn't miss.
You know, Carl never pitched a game that he didn't have a sore arm. He had a knot in the back of his shoulder about the size of a golf ball.
He pitched a no-hitter one time against the Giants when he could, the night before or the couple days before, he could hardly raise his arm.
Not too many pitchers could throw overhand curveballs like Carl Erskine. He had one of the best changeups off of his fastball that I was ever able to see off of any pitcher. And Erskine could throw hard.
Campy. If I was ever in love with anybody, it'd be Campanella. He caught me for 10 years. And the intimacy between a catcher and a pitcher is just fantastic. I knew Roy had been paralyzed and didn't know how bad. Walked to the door of the room. The family had left, or at least excused themselves. So Roy and I were there together, only just the two of us. I was the first teammate Roy saw, and I didn't think about that. But when he saw me, I think he saw the whole ball club, because he began to cry. I guess it was 5 minutes or so, and we didn't say anything. And then suddenly, Roy began to talk and sort of got out of the feeling and started telling me about his situation. He said something like, and tomorrow I go to therapy, I'm going to lift 5 pounds with my right hand. And I'm looking at Roy, I'm thinking, this guy threw out so many ball players, he hit so many home runs, but he is of the mind to be enthused that he is going to lift 5 pounds with his right hand. And so I went back so inspired that I pitched a 2-hitter against the Phillies because I knew Roy was watching from his hospital room in New York, because he told me he would be. I couldn't get that off my mind. That's the last complete game I ever pitched in the big leagues. Betty and I had always had an unwritten feeling, I guess, that once the game was over for me as a player, that we would come back to our hometown. But there wasn't that much opportunity in Anderson, Indiana. So the opportunities came to me, some in broadcasting and one with Van Heusen Shirt Company in New York. Right in the middle of searching for a house in New York or thinking about the move, our fourth child, Jimmy, was born. And I came home for that. Sensed real early there may be some problems. And our doctor suggested we take Jimmy to a specialist to confirm anything that might be. We did that and found that Jimmy did have a Down syndrome condition. Pretty devastating finding for a pro athlete who had 3 healthy athletic kids and had just gone through the trauma of retiring from the sport. Even though the doctor recommended there were good places for Jim, that good care, good kind of facilities he could be taken to, Betty was the strength at that point, and she said, well, Jimmy goes home with us. He's part of the family. Whatever that means, Jimmy's going to be a part of us. At 22, he's not a little child, except in his limitations, he is.
Are you working hard today?
But he goes to a sheltered work program. He's active in Special Olympics. He's learned to swim, rides his bike, runs, throws a softball. Got a pretty good arm, I found out. There's so much normal about a handicapped person. There's only a portion that's so-called abnormal. And I think this is Jimmy's case. He has a share of his life that is not conventional. But I'm convinced that his emotions and feelings, likes, dislikes, desires are very normal in many instances. He used to say, instead of saying no or I don't want it or whatever. So I tried to teach him to say no thank you. And I thought he could do that. But I'm going to stay with him. I'm going to teach him to say no thank you. But he would never respond. He'd only say, One day he ran away next door to our neighbors and set off the alarm in her house, which she had an alarm system. Police came down, very embarrassing for Betty. And she said, if he ever does that again, Carl, you're going to have to really lay it on him. So I told him, you're going to get spanked, Jimmy, if you ever do that again. He did it again a few days later. So I came home, Betty told me, said, you've got to give him a spanking. I said, okay, Jim, let's go. I took him upstairs, took his pants down, ready to lay it on him good. He looked at me. He said, no, thank you. I knew that little booger, he understands. He knows what's going on. He has a real handhold on life. He just does it his own way.
Jim did real well. Ready? Proud of you. Proud of you. Proud of you.
This was the shot heard round the world. In August, the Dodgers had been 13 games in front of the Giants. But Bobby Thompson's home run climaxed the greatest comeback of all time. The Giants went on to the World Series, and the Dodgers went home for a long winter.
We hated the Giants, the uniform. We just hated the uniform. And O'Malley loved that because that was money in his pocket.
I was not warming up until Ralph Branker walked into the ball game. When he walked into the ball game, then I got up to pitch, or warm up rather. And that was the only time that I ever warmed up. But all I can say is, boy, am I glad he went in and I didn't go in.
They were hurrying, hustling all of this equipment and all this champagne out of our clubhouse and into the other side. The door slammed shut, and it's like a tomb in our side with the bedlam going on all around us. So I kind of had a sense of history there, too. I said, Carl, take a good look around because this is one of the moments in sports. So I watched our teammates come in, my teammates come in, one at a time, go to their lockers. Gresson took off his shirt without unbuttoning it. Branca came in, sat on the stairs, going up to the trainer's room, pitched forward with his hands between his knees, and stayed there for a long time.
We went on to win the pennant the next 4 out of 5 years and become world's champions in 1955 after that. So it really, that incident made better players and better men out of us.
In 1952, Joe Black, a 6'3", 220-pound relief pitcher, joined the Dodgers. In his rookie year, he won 15 games, saved another 15, and won a pennant for his team. It was the only successful season Black would have in the major leagues.
When I was 9 years old and selling newspapers, I saw people standing around listening to the loudspeakers, the radio, and I asked this white man, I said, what are you listening to? And he says, the World Series. And I went home and I told my mother, I said, when I get big, I'm going to be a baseball player because they're big shots. And she laughed. She said, why do you think they're big shots? I said, everybody stops to listen. And so I just started thinking, man, I'm going to be a big league baseball player. So I hit, my junior year, I hit 357. My senior year, I hit 380. And the scouts are signing guys, and nobody said a word to me. And me and my foolish self, I went to a scout and said, hey, I'm the best hitter on the team. How come you don't sign me up? And he said the dreaded words. He said, colored guys don't play in the big leagues. I said, you crazy, man. You see me playing baseball? He said, I didn't say you can't play baseball, but they don't play in the big leagues. And they got silent in that clubhouse. And I looked at the coach and the kids on my aliens, and I ran all the way home. It was about 2.5 miles to my house from the field house. And went up in the attic and got my scrapbook, Hank Greenberg, Charlie Gerns, Rudy York, Carl Hope, Harry Danning, Joe DiMaggio, Lou Garrett, and he was right. There wasn't a face of color there. And I tore them all up except Greenberg. And just laid in the bed and just cried.
We played together in the Negro National League. Joe Black was a pitcher for the Baltimore Eli Giants, too. And he was a starting pitcher then, had real good control, much thinner.
I walked in the clubhouse and Felton Snow, the manager, said, hey, come here, I want to introduce you to Pee Wee Butts. And he was the shortstop, he says, and Puccinella, see? And so I said, what do you say, Mr. Butts? And hi, Puccinella, Camp. He said, what do you say, Junior? He said, my name is Campanella, Puccinella. I said, oh. And so Snow said, no, I call him Puccinella because he's Poochie in the stomach. Campy was a little rotund then. And Campy said, what do you play? I said, I was a pitcher. So for some reason, he called me Junior, and he took me under the wing. After Jackie got signed in 46, man, everybody wanted to know when they were going to be next. I didn't know about the slow process, but it was a feeling of elation and probably selfishness because I felt now I'm going to have a chance playing the big leagues one day.
Joe had that sinking fastball, and he made him a good reliever.
He didn't have a real good curveball, but he had excellent control and kept the ball down.
That entire year, that man just had the most tremendous control that I'd ever seen.
I won 15, I lost 4, had an ERA of 2.14. They made me Rookie of the Year. So now I go to spring training. Charlie just saying he's got a great fastball, funny little curve. Now I'm going to give him another pitch. Now, I cannot lift my index finger on either hand. I was born that way. Now, to lift that finger, I got to take my thumb and put it there, like that. But the minute I spread my fingers, they fall. So after about 3 weeks, they said to me, hey, it looks like you can't pick up another pitch because of your fingers. Go back to your old stuff. Now I'm lost. What was my old way? I go to Pee Wee. I said, Pee Wee, do you remember how I used to pitch? Now, Pee Wee says, it looked like when you'd pump just before you throw, you'd tiptoe. I asked Jackie. Jackie says, as I was pumping, it seemed like I'd hunch my shoulders, right? Campy says, it seemed like I turned my butt more to the hitters before I would pivot. So I'm out there trying to figure out what was my old way. And so my second year, I was a baseball player without any confidence. I knew I had to pitch, but I was afraid to pitch. Like I tell my children, I said, you know, your daddy wasn't a superstar. I said, I dreamt of playing in the big leagues. And I said, and I'm one of the few men who can walk this earth and said, I had a dream of being a big league baseball player. I was a big league baseball player. I played in the World Series, and I won the World Series ball game. There's some pitchers in the Hall of Fame who can't say that. I feel that I've made a greater contribution to life and to the world since I've been with Greyhound. I developed the advertising campaigns that go into black magazines and black newspapers on black radio. I developed the public community relations for the black community.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The ultimate measure of man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy."
I'm a Dr. King follower, and Jackie Robinson believer, a Campanella believer, and I promised to my mother. I told her, I said, "Mama, I'm going to do what you used to do, just go out and do things, try to help people." I've gone places and I've had young people come to me and said, "You Joe Black with Greyhound?" I said, "Yeah, I want to thank you for my scholarship." They already write letters, but they remember, and you feel good. I am not embarrassed to say I've been married 5 times. I sit around sometimes and say, "Well, Joe, there's probably something wrong with you. Maybe you should not be married." I say that sometimes. But then I sit back and I say, well, if I was never married, I would have been robbed of two things that make me very happy. There's 2 children. They're my son and my daughter. My youngest child is 12, my daughter. I had guys say, "Man, you crazy? If you get your little girl, man, you tie down, you can't run." I didn't want to run. I felt that every child deserves the right to know that one of their parents loves them and wants them. And I just felt that I was the person. And that's why I went to court. And I think men should take more active participation in the lives of their children. Find out what their dreams are. Find out if they can give them any guidance. And once in a while, tell a child that you love them. It doesn't make you less of a man to tell your child you love them.
Speed and height gets you distance. Don't slow down. Just keep going and up. Okay, come on.
If I look at my children and they look happy and I feel that I'm helping them live a better life, I feel that's what I was put on this earth for.
Ricky would interview his players in depth, never talk about baseball. He would let other experts talk about the techniques of bunting, the techniques of fielding, the techniques of pitching, which he did one-to-one, one-on-one. But the lectures, Mr. Ricky would talk about character, about spiritual dimensions, and about life, totally.
He just said, preach. He said, he started out by praising me first. He said, "I see you led the league in strikeouts," which I did that year. I had 164, I believe. And he said, I see you led the league in strikeouts. This was the next spring after this. Yes, and he said, "Well," he said, "I also noticed you walked 2 men more than you struck out." And I said, "Well, I hadn't noticed that." And he said, "Yes, so see, you're 2 behind."
Preacher Roe, a good-natured, good-humored country boy from the Ozarks, came to the Dodgers after pitching for the Cardinals and the Pirates. Between 1951 and 1953, Preacher Roe won 44 games and lost just 8. But Preacher's accomplishments were overshadowed by his quirk, for he was a champion of that extra-legal pitch, the spitball.
I thought it was quite an accomplishment to be from a real small town, and I mean real small town, and just a country boy to get all the way to New York. It was always my goal to do, and even when I was a kid, my dad said, "Well, I've got me a left-handed boy now, and he's going to be a major league pitcher." This was 9 miles from our home, and we'd walk up here on a Saturday, and we'd have us a ball game. Now, every community had a baseball team, and although it was a small town and outside, we were still learning the game. And this is one of the fields I learned to play baseball on. Brings back a lot of memories. When I went into baseball, I'd learned to pitch in these hills where you just throw hard. And after I'd been there a while, I found out that the harder you throw, the harder they hit them probably. And pitching was a change of speed. It was a timing situation to get the hitter off time. So I became a pitcher to throw. I threw every pitch, I guess, in the book. I could throw curveballs and sliders, screwballs. I could change speeds on every pitch, and I used different strides.
He would pitch a game so easy. It would appear that it was effortless. He walked very few people.
And I pitched for 5 years that I could pitch within 6 inches of the target where I wanted to.
He could throw a ball deliberately. Imagine that. I was trying to throw strikes, and if I threw a ball, it was by accident. This guy could actually throw 2 or 3 balls deliberately.
One thing that I disliked about playing in Black and Preacher, he was always kind of fishing on the plate.
Make them hit the ball. I hated a base on ball so bad. And make everybody hit the ball, and that's what they pay the other 8 guys for, is to field the darn thing and throw them out.
The Preacher was always accused of throwing a spitball every now and then. But I never had a sign to call for a spitball. Never. But I knew every time Preacher would wet one.
You get you a little beech nut chewing gum, which it's a funny thing, only beech nut would work. And I would get this little that, and I'd take the Ford Frick's name, Ford Frick stamp on there, and when you touch your hat, then that's when you could get it, and put it on your hand. See, now, just like that, just rub your hat. I've got it now, and you wouldn't know it. I used to, and had a little practice. And what you do, you rub the ball, and you go to your rosin bag, and now then, you transfer it from your hand to one finger. That's all there was to it. And always have your hand in motion so they couldn't see this finger do this. And one finger is all you needed, and you only needed, you didn't need a drop, half a drop. The principle is to don't wet both sides. The reason you can't use a wet one on a rainy day is all sides are wet. You got to get one side wet and one side dry. Then the ball will come out differently. And that's what makes the pitch. You reckon at age 66 I could make a comeback? You know, in 1954 I decided I'd just about had enough of baseball, or it had enough of me, whatnot, that maybe I better get something I could do to provide for my family and make another life. So West Plains, Missouri was my town. I came back and bought this food market in 1954, worked at it 19 years. We had an old-fashioned meat market, and that was our big drawing card. My son was my butcher the last 6 years. And if you can make the ladies happy at the meat market, and when she checks out at the cash register, they'll be back. It's a pretty good life. I got into it to forget baseball. You know, every time the Dodgers come to St. Louis, after I got out of baseball, and thought, well, it's hard to quit, and also I'll go back and see the Dodgers. And I went for 3 years, never missed a game. And the third year, the last time we were there, we came down to the hotel lobby, and there was all the ball players' bags, like we used to put our bags in the lobby, and then they'd put them on the plane or the train for us. And I told my wife, I said, that's the first time for many years that my bag hasn't been there. And I was so depressed. We went to the game, we saw 9 innings of a ball game and drove 100 miles before either one of us spoke to each other. And I said, I'll never go back again.
How did you look? You know who that looked like?
Didn't look like
that looks like first baseman for New York.
Really hit it. I get an assist on that one. I read in the paper where Mickey Mantle had said he dreamed of playing again. Well, believe it or not, I dream occasionally now of making a big league team again, but I have never found the entrance at the ballpark. I've made it through spring training, and I've made the team, and I was to pitch the next day. I'd go to the ballpark, and I could never find the entrance, and the game would be going on and be completely over, and I'd miss therefore I was out. And I've done that, I imagine, 4 or 5 times, and I'm always waking up in the morning, yes, and I wish I could be there, but well, after all, you know, old Preach is past that. He shouldn't be doing it anymore.
(1947, 1949, 1952, 1953). Each year, the Dodgers won a pennant. Each year, they faced the Yankees in the World Series. Each year, they lost. The Dodgers weren't just the second best team in baseball. They were the second best team in New York. And that hurts.
I've always hated the Yankees, mainly because they beat me out of so many World Series checks, I guess.
Every year we'd have a better team on paper, but we'd make an error, and they'd make 5 runs, they'd make an error, we'd get 1.
Billy Martin. Now, he was a mediocre hitter, infielder. He was a pretty good second baseman, but he was a mediocre hitter. He wasn't a tremendous hitter. Yet when we played this in Ebbets Field, he hit, I think he got 2 doubles or 2 triples in the right center field.
After being in all these pennants and never to win one, and I'm getting, in 1955, I'm getting to be 35, 36 years old, so it's beginning to think I'm never going to have a chance to be on a winner. But there it is right there. They can't take that away from me.
The most consistent of these Dodgers was Carl Furillo from Stony Creek Mills, Pennsylvania. Furillo was a nerveless clutch hitter with an astonishing throwing arm. In one writer's phrase, he could throw a lamb chop past a wolf.
When I lived in Brooklyn, I never felt comfortable there because I like to get my hands dirty. I was born in the country. And in New York, I couldn't be in the garden or around in the countryside. My dad came over from the old country. He was from Naples and moved down here in Stony Creek, and he did nothing but raise crops and vegetables and things like that. And that's where I was born, down here in the back.
The Reading rifle, or whatever they call him, one of the greatest arms I ever saw.
I tell you, I've seen him throw guys out at third or at home base, and the ball never even get high as your head all the way in. He could really throw.
Put the gloves for it. Ain't gonna hurt him. That's it.
Hey,
that's the way you're supposed to throw in the game.
You're getting better.
Throw it right at Pop's head. He ain't gonna hurt Pop.
Come on, you ain't gonna hurt me. I never in my life ever thought that I could throw a ball as straight and strong as I did. But Campanella and myself, when I got into the majors and that, we always caught together. He stood around home plate, I would stay out, maybe past first base. Right there. And he would hold his glove up like a target. In the chest. And I would throw the ball and try to hit the target, and he did the same thing. Hey. I worked at it, to be honest with you. Come on.
Did a super job in right field. Could play that right field wall better than anyone I ever saw. He knew there must have been, I think, 26 different ways that ball could come off of that ball in Ebbets Field, and he knew every one of them.
If they talk about the monster at Fenway Park, I'd like to see what these fellows would do with a wall that runs at about a 25-degree angle, then goes straight up, has sponge, has chicken wire, and then has cement.
If it would hit up in here, in this area, the ball had a tendency of coming up on an arc, coming out. Sometimes it would hit up in here, on that seam. And when it hit that seam, it would go straight up. Sometimes it would fool you, and it would hit right above the seam, and the ball would come straight down into the playing field. And if you didn't watch yourself, you got it between the eyes. After I started getting onto the wall a little bit, it was a pleasure playing it and throwing the guys out.
Carl was a very private person. He was probably the one guy on the ball club that we didn't pal around with that much. He went his own way most of the time.
There was a certain amount of boys that lived in one area, and, you know, like Snider, Erskine, Pee-wee, and Rube Walker, and there's quite a few ball players over there. They always had their get-together in that area, and where they lived. And I don't ever recall them saying, well, Carl, we're having a get-together tonight. Why don't you stop over or something like that?
One time I kind of felt like that he kind of resented the fact that we kind of had a clique on the ball club, but we didn't have a clique. We just happened to live in one neighborhood.
But I never had hard feelings against any of them because if someone like, say, for instance, Snider, now he would be in a slump. And right away we get together, a whole bunch of us, and say, well, why don't you come out an hour early tonight, or tomorrow night, and we'll work with you, and we'll let you hit, we'll pitch to you. We always work together. I never looked as far as baseball to give me a helping hand. When I got out of baseball, I was an iron worker. I was in business for the grocery and deli combination. I have a nice little job now as a guard, with good benefits, insurance, and everything else that goes with it. I can't retire. I got to keep working because the pension won't make it. One day I was down at work and I felt a lump in the back of my head, right at the skull part there, the base. So they put me in a hospital. And they took a lot of tests and all and left me out. I think I have it pretty well beat. I mean, I'm a touch wood. I know a guy, John Wayne, said it. He had cancer beat, but he died of cancer. So that don't bother me. It was like the doctor told me. He says, Carl, you got leukemia. Now, he was looking for a reaction. I said, so what? What am I going to do about it? I have it, I have it. It says, if I'm supposed to have it, I'm going to have it. If not, I'm not going to have it. My family is important to me. My grandchildren are important to me. And working every day, which I am. See, the only education I had, I was up to 8th grade. I didn't go to college or high school because at that time, things were a little bad. As far as I'm concerned, for a guy who went to 8th grade, I think I did pretty good.
Well, I can recall those fans in Brooklyn, and the field was small, and they seemed to be right on top of you, you know. And it didn't matter if you won or lost. You were their heroes. You were their bums, and they loved you. And they'd even tell you, well, tough luck, you lost one, you'll win the next one, you know, and they were still for you.
When you got booed in Brooklyn, you always say, well, that's some dumb Giant fan or Yankee fan.
So I walk through the rotunda at Ebbets Field, and there are lines of people waiting to get in. But I hear this very distinct Brooklyn voice. First time I ever heard this. I hear this voice say, hey, there goes Erskine from Fort Worth. Erskine.
Imagine being recognized when television wasn't the big thing. Imagine being recognized from the way you walk. And that was the possibility that you had from these people because that's how much they paid attention. They went to the ballpark.
From the bullpen came Clem Labine, a mercurial French-Canadian from Rhode Island. Labine had a flat-top crew cut and a wide breaking curve. He won just 77 games in his career, but he saved another 95 that other men had started.
My parents, like most of the people in Woonsocket, really came from the Quebec area. I was brought up speaking two languages by my parents, French, which was a house language, and English, which was my school language. Is that finished now? Okay, after you get this stitch in?
Yeah, this was complete. What was it?
My father, whose name is Aldor, was a weaver. I suppose my father was like all fathers who worked so hard and at a dreary job. He wants his son to have things better than he had, and I don't know whether he did it. I don't think my dad did it by saying, gee, I want him to be a ball player or anything to that effect. I'd say my dad used to look at me and say, all I want you to do is make $50 a week. If you make $50 a week, you're going to be a successful man. Being a relief pitcher later on in my career became the greatest thing that ever happened. I just enjoyed it so much. It's sort of like, well, I don't want to be corny about it, but, you know, it's like having the game in your hands. You instigate everything. You start everything. You come in when the situation is yours, and you can handle it the way you want.
Clem's forefinger was broken in the last joint, and it had a little bend to it. And he could grip the ball a certain way with that broken finger that would make his fastball sink.
He was determined that he wanted to win. And he could be nasty, too. He could knock you flat.
Never smile. Don't be a smiler. Grab the ball. Now, these things that I tell you are only things that I learned from myself and I thought were important. But always grab the ball. Never let somebody hand you the ball. Take that ball away. Show that you want the ball. And when you warm up, instead of taking 7 pitches, take 5. Say, I'm ready. You had a man on first. Well, throw 2 pitches and then warm up the first base by trying to pick him off. We used to do that too. But they're always aggravate the hitter. Make him wait. I learned so many things. You know, pitching it's an art. It's call it anything you wish. It's an art. It's too bad you have to be old to really know something about it and not have it when you've got that really good stuff. I think that I left a lot to be desired as a father at the time because baseball was so important. I would have to say that Jay, of all my children, suffered the most from not having his father there at times when he certainly could have used him.
I think a lot of ball players begin to feel that way. They go home and they see their children 3 years old, and the next time they look, they say, I didn't know you were 14. I mean, your children grow up on you before you have a chance to have any input.
He became so reckless that you couldn't believe it. It was either to show me that he could do things, and I wasn't paying attention the way I should have. You know, we had a swimming pool, for instance. He used to take running dives from my carport and had to clear an entire deck and a diving board to get into that swimming pool. He would do it. Jay had to do something as far as proving himself, and joining Marines was really the way Jay was going to do it to me.
I joined it because I had to at that point in my life. People would say, you know, oh, you're Clem Labine's son. And it was just the idea that, yeah, you're right, to a point, but I'm me. I'm not Clem Labine. I didn't pitch for the damn Dodgers. I'm me.
I was a type of father that felt, gee, you don't push your son into sports to the degree where I wouldn't play catch. I wouldn't, you know, I'd stay away from it most of the time. Do it on your own. If you're going to do it, you're not going to do it because your father made you do this. And he was the type of child that kept it within himself. He didn't tell me these things. It took a long, long time before my son ever told me what he thought about me.
You have to go through it. At least I had to. Going through that anger, going through it, through the Marine Corps, going to Vietnam, losing my leg, the whole bit.
You just hope it's not going to happen, and it happened to us like it happened to a lot of other parents at the time. And there's no way that you can soften the blow. The blow is harsh. It tears your heart out.
So I was down on my hands and knees with a bayonet, checking for landmines. And I still believe to this day that I wouldn't have lost my leg if the squad leader hadn't have run in front of me. And that's how I went down.
I've had a lot of things happen to me. Of course, I lost my wife through cancer, my first wife. I'm remarried. And I think that my second wife has given me a lesson that's very valuable. It's the fact of not being afraid of people, not being afraid to touch people, not being afraid to emotionally give of yourself and to show that you care. And I think the day that I showed JR that I cared about putting my arms around him and, I just think that the relationship had to get better from just that point, just from the touch. And a touch is enough to say, hey, I care, I love you. JR married, and we have a grandchild. She's just exuberant about everything. She loves to study, she loves to color, she loves to sing. She makes me pretty proud to be a grandparent. It's something for Jay to be proud of.
We started becoming more friends and father and son type of thing. We started telling each other what was troubling us, what was hurting us. I love the man. To put it in ways I've done before, I laid my life on the line for him. I would.
You know, between the ages of 30 and 40, that's when you lose that major league timing. You just can't hit that good fastball anymore. I mean, the mind thinks you can do it, but the body just can't follow through.
I said, Carl, are you sure what you're doing? You know, you've been with this club for 14 years. This is your whole life. You've dreamed about it. Do you want to quit? Well, it wasn't quitting. It was just recognizing that I didn't have any left. So I said, you better burn this moment in your mind, buddy, because you're going to be back home in Indiana watching TV, and you're going to say, man, I think I could still pitch against these guys.
You know, I played an old-timers game in Los Angeles 3 or 4 years ago, and Tom Haller was the batter, and he hit a long fly ball to right center field. And I took off. My first step wasn't bad. I said, I can catch that ball. Well, after 3 steps, I said, no, I can't.
Kind of scares me a little bit, but getting this age and losing all these Dodgers, look back on all of them, and we're losing some of them, and kind of makes a guy wonder how old he really is, doesn't it?
Of course, Snider made a classic remark not too long ago when he said, Pee-wee said, they're just, everybody in the infield is gone except you. And he said, I just hope it doesn't jump over the infield and come out to the outfield.
The Dodgers' graceful center fielder was Edwin Snider, who came from Compton, California. But the Brooklyn fans adopted him and rechristened him the Duke of Flatbush. Power was Duke Snider's game. With his picture swing, he hit 418 home runs and was voted into the Hall of Fame.
A beautiful night for baseball at Shea Stadium in New York. And hi again, everybody. This is Dave Van Horn, along with Duke Snider. The Expos are rolling along, Duke. It seems they can't do anything wrong.
Well, Dave, I think Jim Fanning's doing something that is going to really pay off in the end. He's resting players. He's rested Carter. He's rested Dawson. We lived in this area from 1952 to 1957. It's a beautiful area of Brooklyn called Bay Ridge. This was our house. A lot of players lived in this area in Bay Ridge. Wee Reese lived a block and a half away. Carl Erskine about 4 blocks away. Preacher Roe not too far away, about a mile and a half. And the neighborhood was very close. We had block parties a couple of times during the summer, barbecues and what have you. And Pee-wee and I rode together, and he'd pick me up out front here, and I'd drive by and pick him up. And it was a lot of fun. We talked baseball naturally all the way to the park and all the way back, and I learned an awful lot from him.
He would get very upset with himself if he didn't do well.
He pouted. It's the only terminology I can think of. He was a pouter.
When I was a youngster, and I think most professional athletes, when they were youngsters, they were the stars of their team in high school. I really didn't know what failure was, and I got to the big leagues, and I thought it would be a snap. I thought it'd be a piece of cake, and it wasn't. And I finally met up with adversity.
He would maybe go 0 for 3 or 0 for 4. He'd be standing out in the outfield, and maybe he wouldn't be thinking about who the hitter was. He's thinking about not getting a base hit. And I'd look around to him and say, hey, Duke, move in a couple of steps. And he'd take one big step and look at me like this. Is this far enough?
But he did have this, little personality problem, which manifested itself one night in Brooklyn when the fans got on him substantially, booed him pretty heavily. And Duke came in the clubhouse. I think we lost the game probably. And Duke yells across the old clubhouse, you writers want to write something? I'll give you something to write. These are the lousiest baseball fans in the world, right here in Brooklyn. You can print it.
Pee-wee says, you don't mean that. I said, I mean it, So they They wrote it. It was Chase Eisenhower's heart attack, back to page 4, something like that.
And the next day, guys, did they write Snider? Oh, man. They came out in droves to get on the Duke.
I said, man, Duke, you could be in for a rough night. He kind of smiled. I said, yeah, I could be.
He singled the first time, homered the second, doubled the second. He had like 4 for 4, 2 home runs. They were cheering the roof off of that place before the night was over. He had a grace about his movements that was beautiful. And here's Snider rounding the bases. And I get chills watching this guy. And I think, this is my roommate. This guy is destined. He's great.
I could run, throw, hit, field, do all the facets of the game and do them rather well. I think probably the weakest point of my game was fielding ground balls.
Duke, I said, why in the hell don't you charge those ground balls out, Jesse? These guys don't even hesitate at second base. He said, Pee Wee, I want to tell you something. He said, I was an infielder when I was younger, and said, I hated those ground balls, and I still hate them.
But all in all, I just have to say, after all, he's a Hall of Famer. And just do is just do. Duke had everything and was everything that he was, but he could have been greater. I think he could have risen to even greater heights that he really pushed himself every once in a while.
I think Clem's right. I could have been a better ball player, and that bothered me. But, you know, some guys mature at the age of 30, and some guys mature at the age of 25, and some never mature. And I don't know exactly what turned it around for me as far as being a worrywart and a moper and a moody type person. But I don't know. You finally realize that there's much more to life than a strikeout. Probably the saddest day in my life was when I was sold to the Mets for money. That's the time where I realized that loyalty wasn't any longer a part of the Dodger tradition. In 1964, I finished my career as a Giant, and it was probably the eeriest feeling that I've ever had in my life. Look down and see Giants across my chest. It was eerie. I'd look down and say, oh no. But I was at a time in my life where I'm putting 4 children through school, and the dollar was needed. And I played that year, only I didn't do much. I was through. In fact, I was through at age 31 when I had knee surgery. But I didn't know what year, but I knew it was going to be soon that I was going to have something to fall back on. The avocado farm, 1956, while we started, we moved to Fallbrook and moved on our 30 acres of land where we'd planted the trees and everything. It takes a long time for those trees to grow and to make money. And so we built a bowling alley in Fallbrook, but the town wasn't quite ready for as big an establishment as we put up. And the people that I was in business with all of a sudden said, well, we're going to have to close the bowling alley and go into bankruptcy. I had a lot of sleepless nights, and my wife and I both did, but I sold the ranch, and I got into managing and teaching in baseball. You got strong arms, but it takes some of your body to go along with those arms to hit the ball, you know?
Did you hit every game?
No, I'm not saying that.
No, I just
Nuts, I struck out 1,200 times. Buzzy Bavasi of the Dodgers was trying to get a franchise in San Diego. And I told him I'd like to go with him. I'm not sure, but if I'd have said I'd like to be the manager, he might have made me the manager, but I didn't want to be the manager because it's an expansion team, number one. You're going to lose 110 to 120 games. And I knew I couldn't handle that. So I said, well, I kind of like to broadcast. He said, okay, you got it. You're a broadcaster. Like a little slider. It didn't slide much, but range over the top of the pitch for the strikeout. So Craig Swan throwing the ball with a little more velocity than we saw him last time he pitched against the Expos. I'm very happy in what I'm doing, and I just hope that not too many other ex-ball players find out about this job because I've got a couple more years I want to work yet.
When I think about these guys, it really does something to me because I really haven't I don't see him that often. The Preacher Roe, Labine, maybe I see once a year at a sports show in Chicago or New York. Erskine. I'm lucky if I see him once a year.
We were close. Now, you just better believe it. We were a close team. But I think being so far apart and getting a little older, we don't do as much. And that's probably the reason we don't see each other more.
Now, 30 years later, you sit around and you only have feelings of admiration when you think about Reese and Snider and Campanella and Robinson and Roe and Billy Cox, because they were just a great bunch of guys.
If there is a specialty about this team, if there is a lasting impact, I think it was Ricky's selection of the talent and personalities that he molded together. I will have to be the first to admit this is probably not the greatest team in the record book. We beat the Yankees one time in 5 tries in a World Series. You wouldn't put us down as the all-time greatest winning World Series. It took 75 years in Brooklyn to win a pennant. But this is bigger than that. And I think if you follow these men now back in their own lives and how they've handled life generally, I think that quality is somewhat still there.
Catcher Roy Campanella was a jovial man from a section of Philadelphia called Nicetown. He had a squat body and the power of a sumo wrestler. Campanella hit more home runs than any catcher before him, won 3 National League Most Valuable Player awards, and was voted into the Hall of Fame.
I really didn't realize that every day I was going to have a gentleman come and to get me up and dress me, take care of me, take me where I was going to go. It's 25 years I've lived this way. But I thank God that my good days outnumber my bad days. When I went to junior high school, they had big circles drawn on the gymnasium floor. And it said pitchers, catchers, infielders, and outfielders. No one went in the circle for the catchers. So I walked over there, and I was a cinch to make the team.
He was an all-star in the Negro League. He could hit those home runs. When they talked about catching, it was Josh Gibson and Campanella.
Yes. Look, stay ready for the fastball.
Okay.
I don't give a damn what he took. You're always ready for the curveball or anything else.
Okay.
I played in the Negro National League, and I never had the idea that the Dodgers were scouting me until the day that I played an exhibition game one night, and Charlie Dressett was the coach and manager for the Major League team I played against. And he asked me to come to the Dodgers office that Saturday morning in Brooklyn. Mr. Rickey had a book on his desk, approximately 3 inches thick, had all of my school transcripts and everything I ever did on the baseball field playing. And he knew that my father was Italian. He knew that my mother was American black woman. Ooh, I wanted to play in the Coliseum. I'd never seen a left field fence like that. He said, Roy, I was a catcher too. All of our white pitchers have to take signals from you, but you are going to have to get them to believe in your signal calling.
Besides being the best catcher that I ever pitched to, and as far as I can say, that I ever seen, he was a gentleman and just a heck of a nice guy.
Campanella was a quiet leader. Campanella had a way of knowing when people were tense, and he could say something that would make you relax.
Mr. Rickey had always called Jackie and I in the office together and had stressed that, look, you're not only here to prove that you can play baseball, you have to prove that you're a gentleman, you're just not arguing at the drop of a hat, and you can get along off of the field. We were roommates, and we would lay up at night and discuss this between ourselves, what we had to do off of the field as well as on the field. And we had the same way of doing it, except Jackie was a little more boisterous and militant about it than I was. I thought you just had to do it without a big stick and smooth judgment. I've always felt if I could let my bat do the talking for me, and thank God I did.
I see pictures of him playing ball, and then all of a sudden I see him in a wheelchair. I mean, it just don't look kosher. It just don't look right.
I stayed and closed up the store and let all the employees go home. And being late that night, it snowed a little and froze up. And after closing the store, I drove home. And that's when going around the curve, I could see the pole, but the car was sliding and I was turning my wheel, trying to turn away from it. But sliding right into it, the pole hit the left front fender, just the left front fender, another 12 inches, and I could have missed it. And knowing that the engine was running, I went to turn the key off, and that's when I couldn't move my left arm. And I was paralyzed right then.
Just by that jerky accident. Just put everything the guy worked for, just put it out of reach.
A doctor had walked in my room and put his head under the oxygen tent with me. And I noticed in his eyes he had tears. And he said, he told me he didn't want me to answer him. He said, "You're having a tough time to breathe." And I said, just nodded my head. And he said, "I'm going to have to lance your throat."
And doctors used to wonder, and I think Campy knows now, that they used to wonder, why is that man still alive? But it was a will not to die.
I went to sleep and I woke up the next morning and I could breathe so free and easy again. And I just felt like I was on my way coming back, regardless of being paralyzed.
He has never hit bottom that anybody knows about. Where's he get that strength? Well, I've asked myself that so many times.
I never realized I'd be totally paralyzed. But I always tried to say to myself, I would love to walk again, but if I didn't, I wasn't going to worry myself.
We didn't know he was having any family problems or anything like that because he kept that completely away from most of us anyway.
My first wife didn't accept me being paralyzed, and it was a little difficult for her, and she had a cerebral hemorrhage and passed right after my accident. And here I was left with 3 children right then, and I had a big adjustment to make right then, and thank God I was able to make it. I never realized I would ever remarry again, and then meeting Roxy at a basketball game and living next door to me in the city in an apartment. I asked her and she accepted, and with her 2 children that I adopted them and she adopted my 3 children. We had a combination of 5 children, and we made our family, and she put our home back together again, and we lived happy from then to now. I've often told my wife, you know, I never dream of being paralyzed. I dream of playing baseball. I dream of playing games, walking, getting around, but I never dream of being in a wheelchair. If I had my life to live all over again, I would have done it all the same way, except run into the pole that I did and turned over. That's the only thing I'd eliminated. And that's the God's honest truth.
And I'm glad that I can report from my own personal experiences on the baseball diamond that the feeling of intolerance no longer exists. The brotherhood movement is gaining ground every day. It is slowly and surely becoming a fact and not remaining just a theory.
Jackie Robinson was the competitive man. He made you want to play baseball.
He would come in a tough situation. He'd have the ball in his hand. He'd hand it to me, and he would say, and with such confidence, even when I had doubts, Jackie would say, here's the ball. You can do it. I don't have any doubt about it.
Jackie Robinson taught himself to turn the other cheek. Somehow, Mr. Rickey saw in Jackie Robinson a man who was capable to absorb these slings and insults and not punch, even though all of his instinct says, I want to punch somebody. He had two things. He had God, and he had a wife named Rachel. And Jackie told me, he said, there were times when I cried. And I don't mean verbally, I mean actual tears to Rachel. He said, because it was just too frustrating. And he said, there were times I wanted to punch. I wanted to say I was going to quit. He said, but Rachel would sit and talk to me and make me change my mind, and I'd go back the next day and do the best job I can.
He took so much abuse, verbally and physically, that the 50s became Jackie's time to howl.
It came out in the wrong way sometimes. He would holler at an umpire who called him out on strikes. Says, I know why you called me out, and it's because I'm black.
He could be very, very belligerent. Could be a little tough to get along with. But I just had a great deal of respect for the man and what he went through, and especially the type of person he was, and that he couldn't be himself when he first came up.
I read the newspapers that the Dodgers had sold Jackie to the Giants. I thought they were trying to be funny.
But I really wasn't altogether surprised when they traded him. But of all people, the Giants, I didn't think he would go. I'd have been disappointed if he did go. Glad he didn't go.
Jackie signed a contract with chock full of nuts to be a vice president. And he took the same pride and competitive attitude that job he had on the athletic field.
Jackie spoke like he wanted to speak. He didn't care what you thought about it.
Thank goodness that we Negroes have chosen democracy over communism, and we have said to the world that we are not interested in communism, but what we want here in America is a bit more democracy.
I can remember Jackie inviting me for a march on Washington, which was not very popular at that time, believe me. And I remember talking it over with various people and making a decision that I probably wouldn't be in my best behalf to go. And I remember calling Carl, and I didn't go, and Carl didn't go. And to this day, we felt that we quite deserted Jackie.
He had tremendous pain with Jackie Jr., who had gone to Vietnam, came home with a drug problem.
Later, after he had gone through rehabilitation and was traveling around the New York area talking to young people about the pitfalls of drugs, he had an unfortunate death in an automobile accident. But at the funeral, when Jackie was walking away from his son's coffin, it looked like every step he took, he got like 10 years older. And later we were talking, and Jackie said, you know, I spent a lot of time in my life traveling around helping other kids, and I didn't give enough time to my own son.
The biggest jolt that I got in Jackie's relationship after baseball was going back to a book party, the Tavern on the Green in New York, for the Boys of Summer. And Jackie and I were standing to the side of a crowd, and there were books being offered and autographed. And a lady came over and spoke to Jack, and he had just told me he quit playing golf because he said, I can't see the ball anymore. So I thought that was a figure of speech or something because he was a little heavy or whatever. The lady handed him a book and a pen and asked him to sign on a page. And Jackie turned to me and he said, would you start my hand on the page so I don't go off the edge? And it hit me, he's not kidding. He can't see.
I saw this man who was going blind, who had diabetes and had a good chance of losing his legs. I just couldn't believe that this was this fighting individual. And of all the things in life that made me stop to think about how lucky you are, that probably was one of them. That life doesn't treat you kindly because you're a well-built athlete.
At the All-Star game, in Cincinnati when Jackie was going to get this plaque. And they said it was time to go out on the field. And he grabbed Rachel's arm, and we all walked out there. And he says, and I will be happy when one day we come to one of these ball games and I look in one of those dugouts and I see a black manager. And that's the last speech I heard him say.
That was the last funeral I was at, in my wheelchair too, because I felt that close to Jackie, being a roommate, a teammate, and someone close to Jackie. What an athlete Jackie Robinson was, and what a person he was.
I learned from Jackie, and I'd have to say, Campy, all the Dodgers, you learned not to be quite so selfish. You learned how to wear your laurels with pride, but with a word called humility. You learn that you're not the king of the hill, and that nobody's going to give you something for nothing, and the fight is never over. I think that's the biggest thing I learned from Jackie. The fight is never over.
The Brooklyn Dodgers. Well, the team is long gone. The ballpark is torn down. Still, I am haunted by the memory of the guys we called the Duke, Pee-wee, Campy, Jackie, Preacher, and Erskine. Them were the Dodgers. Them were the real bombs.
If you haven't seen a game in Ebbets Field, you just ain't lived.
It was an old ballpark, but it was well kept.
It was a dark, dreary-looking building. You know what I mean? In the front, it was real modern.
It was always kept very nice. Seating capacity, 30,000, a little better.
The big sign up in front of it as you come in the rotunda.
Those little hot dog stands on the side.
I sort of smell it, too.
The gas station out in right field where Snider hit so many home runs.
Happy Felton down the right field foul line happened. This little knothole gang where ball players are talking to the kids.
Thinking the park was so big until I got into it and had to pitch there, knowing it was so darn small.
I can see Snider climbing that fence out in the outfield. Carl Furillo taking the balls off of the fence and throwing them in out at second.
Still see the scoreboard in my mind, sitting way out there in right center. And on the bottom, I can see the writing on the bottom yet.
We used to give a suit for anyone who hit that sign, but Furillo played right in front of it. Nobody ever hit it.
And then there was a little light right back of Campanella's shoulder that I used as a target for my left-handed. When a left-handed hitter, I threw my curveball at this little light.
I see a black lady sitting between left field foul line and third base hollering, "Hey, Pee-wee, I'm the mother of the Dodgers. You know that. Come over here and give me a ball."
Hilda Chester ringing the bell. Eddie Baton with the helmet on.
Symphony band aggravating the visiting teams with their tunes, especially that walking song. And when the guy goes to sit down, give him that long blare. That's Ebbets Field. That's home. A family of fans, a family of ball players, a family of people working in the ballpark.
I see myself standing on the mound pitching to a hitter, and see Betty and my kids come in about the third inning. By the time she got them dressed and got them there. And I used to stand on the mound at Ebbets Field on a nice warm afternoon, and I know everybody thought I was looking at the hitter or looking for the sign. I was looking at Betty and the kids back there and saying to myself, "You lucky guy, you." Pitching in the big leagues, a nice family, and what could be better?
Ebbets Field, 1913, 1957. Beautiful.